Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well, or at least as well as you can if you are in Florida. I know it's probably kind of scary dealing with yet another hurricane. So I'm sitting here in my office and I am making sure that this is working. I hope it is. Let's see. It's always fun trying to see if YouTube is streaming. I've had many issues over the years. Okay, looks like I'm good. I'm going to double check my sound real quick. Okay, so sound is good. I have the chat as well up in case I get questions. So that way I can keep an eye on that. And let's go ahead and get right into it. And let's see, we're going to put this phone. All right. There we go. That way I can see chat, just in case someone jumps in here and wants to know what's going on. So we do have Idalia, or Idalia. Is it Idalia? There's been some confusion about the pronunciation of this. I had to look it up. It is Idalia. Beautiful name. How unfortunate is it that hurricanes always have such pretty names? And let's take a look at what's going on. So we are running out of sunlight, which means we're not able to see much anymore on visible satellite. But gosh, you can really see the convection in this storm just bubbling up, especially there around the center. It has been strengthening pretty steadily today throughout the day. And you can really see things developing quite nicely here on the infrared. Very healthy looking storm. It is undergoing that process of strengthening rapidly, and we've seen that throughout the day. And let me double check the current winds. I'm pretty sure it's 105 sustained. It is 105 miles per hour, moving north at about 16 miles an hour. So Fort Myers, Southwest Florida, you've seen impacts today. We had flooding on Fort Myers Beach. We had, all sorts of issues. Few tornado warnings as those outer bands rolled through, but you are in the clear other than the outer bands. So, you still have those higher, winds rolling in. You still got some gusty winds, some sort of blusteriness, but I know a lot of folks were worried about this taking a turn like Ian did. That scenario is not going to happen. So you can, you don't have to, you shouldn't completely let your guard down because you're still seeing those outer bands. You're still getting that stormy weather, but the main impacts look like they are going to be in the Big Bend, and this is heading pretty much due north, and you can see that here on satellite. So when is this going to make landfall, and how strong is it going to be? And both these are the sort of high resolution hurricane models. The hurricane something forecasting system. I keep looking up that acronym and I keep forgetting it. This is a new product. It's a great model. This has actually been really accurate so far, in my opinion. There's always changes in the track and the intensity, but I'm pretty impressed with this. I think that this is a great product. It just went online in June, and so far it's provided really useful information. And of course, you use it with all the other models and data you have. But since we've had, the hurricane hunters sampling this storm, since we've seen the center form, I think the forecast has pretty much been for a Big Bend landfall. And the question is, where is it going to head? Is it going to be in the Appalachian Bay? Is it going to be closer to Cedar Key? It looks like it's more going to be toward the Appalachian Bay. And this is likely going to be a Category 3 hurricane when it makes landfall. I would say the higher end, there is potential for this to be a Category 4, possibly. However, a Category 3 is pretty likely, and it doesn't matter whether it's a 3 or 4. The impacts are still going to be pretty extreme for folks along the coast there. And in terms of time, this is 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. So that's where we're seeing you're going to see big impacts in areas like Tallahassee. You're going to see big impacts into Gainesville, Valdosta even, as this moves into Georgia. So this is the A model of this, and you can see this pushing into South Georgia as a pretty darn powerful storm, bringing really heavy rain. Looks like a lot of the convection's kind of on that northerly side in this model in terms of the heavy rain, but notice this is pushing through into Augusta, into Charleston, up through the Carolinas, and it's still going to be packing some really, really gusty winds as it moves out offshore, still as a tropical storm. So that's one of the models, and HAFS-B is showing a very similar forecast, I would say landfall sometime around 7. It's going to be plus or minus about 2 hours, but I think we're looking at a morning landfall for sure, and likely going to be, oh, thank you, Jude, I appreciate that, but it is going to be a morning landfall around 7 a.m., Category 3 storm, and yeah, this is looking like a pretty robust system. It doesn't matter if it's a 3 or a 4, those impacts are going to be very noticeable and life-threatening. So we can look at the forecast advisory as well, and you can kind of see sort of this, track outlook and whatnot. These are, this is kind of just talking about what the National Hurricane Center is seeing. I like to look at this information. I know it can be kind of wordy, but there's always some good stuff in here. And then you look here, the key messages, and basically what we're seeing is that landfall within 24 hours. Catastrophic impacts from storm surge inundation is the top thing, 10 to 15 feet from the Osceola River to Yankeetown. Life-threatening storm surge along other areas of the Gulf Coast. So let's take a look right now at the track. There it is. We're going to see a major hurricane making landfall. It is going to be likely a Category 3 when it makes landfall. Can't rule out a Category 4, but here's the issue with anything beyond that is that there's just not enough time. This is strengthening rapidly, and it's going to be at the very least a high-end Category 2. I'm saying it's likely, and so is the National Hurricane Center, and pretty much everyone else saying it's likely going to be a 3. But it doesn't matter because the impacts are going to be there no matter what, and they could be deadly. So I do think there is that potential. I think the ceiling on this is a Category 4. And the reason for that is there's just not enough time for strengthening to a Category 5. So I think the most likely scenario, however, is going to be this makes landfall as Category 3. And I hope that wasn't confusing to you. I just know that, online you see all these categories thrown out there and, all this different information. But you got to focus on the impacts. You have to remember, too, as we've seen today, impacts are felt well away, more than 100 miles away from the center. We had, tropical storm force gusts in the Keys today along the southwest coast. You saw that flooding in Fort Myers Beach. You don't have to be right up on a hurricane to have the impacts. And that right side quadrant, or that right side of the storm, which is the stronger part of the storm, has been lashing the coast of Florida. So we've had tornado warnings and all sorts of, not fun stuff. The flooding threat from storm surge is very concerning, and hopefully everyone who's been under those mandatory evacuations are out of there, especially from, Ocklawaconee into Yankeetown, into Chassahowitzka. These areas especially, you've got that 10 to 15 surge, of course, between Osceola and Yankeetown, or is it Osceola? And then 7 to 11 for the area in red. And you still got some pretty impressive, surge. You're even going to deal with this in Indian Pass, into Carabel, and into Tampa Bay. There's been some surge as well. But really, it's the Big Bend that has the greatest risk for that really just catastrophic surge. And that has been so concerning. I hope everyone there has left. Pretty much running out of time right now. You need to get out if you haven't yet. Please take this seriously. And then from, the mouth of the St. Mary's River on the East Coast through Tybee all the way up into the South Santee River, you got 2 to 4 feet of surge. So the coastal islands, you're going to get that surge. I always say, the road to Tybee is probably going to be a little bit flooded. It probably will be. I grew up in Savannah. And I know some Savannah folks like to watch these, and I want to make sure that you are aware that you are going to feel the impacts in the form of gusty, damaging winds and some storm surge, possibly a few tornadoes. And you take a look at the wind risk as we see this. You see those powerful storm winds, of course, the hurricane winds. But then, South Georgia is still seeing hurricane force winds as this continues to push inland throughout tomorrow morning into the early afternoon. And you see, 50, even 60 mile per hour wind gusts pretty far inland. So that's a big concern with this. This is going to be knocking down trees, causing power outages, so make sure that your phone is charged and make sure you're just ready for those. And you want to make sure that you're just paying attention to what local officials are telling you. And, for folks in Florida and the Big Bend, you still have a little bit of time. It's getting real close. The winds are picking up for you. But, if you're in the Big Bend, anywhere from here to about here to Cedar Key, get out. You don't have a lot of time. And this is just so concerning. And it's always hard to watch because you see this awful impacts from these storms. And it's not just along the coast with the surge, it's inland as well with the flooding, with the potential for tornadoes. Now, I think the flooding issue up to about 10 inches, possibly up to about a foot of rain for Tallahassee. Tallahassee, you're going to be hit really hard by this. And there's a lot of trees, so you're going to see a lot of power outages. I expect some massive power outages around Tallahassee, but even up through Valdosta, into Augusta, Georgia, into Savannah and Charleston, you're probably not going to see quite as much rain. I think you are going to be on the drier side of the storm, but you're going to see some wind. It's going to be a windy day for folks in Atlanta and Charlotte into tomorrow and beyond. And this little strip of moisture here goes all the way up through the Central Carolinas into the Outer Banks. And this is going to be flooding concerns, severe weather concerns as well in the form of tornadoes. If you're on the right side of the storm, that's typically where the tornadoes are. So we want to make sure that you're paying attention and that you know what's happening, even if you're far inland from this storm. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover, trying to focus on those impacts for folks along the Big Bend. It's time's about up. You got to get out of there. If you're in Georgia and you haven't put all your loose stuff inside yet, it's going to blow away. It's going to be real windy. South Georgia's going to see some hurricane strength winds. And you're likely going to see some pretty significant power outages. And you're going to feel the impacts from this in the form of surge in areas like Jacksonville, up through the islands, into Savannah, into Charleston. So there's a lot of areas that are under the risk. In Augusta, down through central Georgia, this includes Idalia, into Valdosta, you're going to see some inland flooding as well, likely with those really heavy rainfall amounts just kind of socking you in. So I know I've been talking a bit about those impacts. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that this isn't just surge, it's not just wind, it's flooding, it's tornadoes, it's a little bit of everything with this because it is a massive storm. So yep. Thank you guys so much for commenting. I'm getting quite a few, and I really appreciate you. And I hope I'm giving you information that helps you out. And I think I'm just gonna go ahead and dip out now. I hope you guys stay safe. And I'm thinking about everyone. I'm thinking about everyone in the Big Bend and to Tallahassee. You got those big bands rolling through. Even from Gainesville up through Valdosta to college towns. There's a lot going on, and this system is having big impacts even really far out from the center, but making landfall 7 a.m.-ish, give or take a couple of hours tomorrow morning, somewhere in the Big Bend. And you can see here kind of just where we've been watching this system as it moves in, and praying for the best, hoping for the best. There's not a lot of Waffle Houses. I think most of them are around Tallahassee, so we like to use the Waffle House Index. If your Waffle House is open, you're in good shape. If it has a limited menu or is running on generator, things are not looking good. And if your Waffle House is closed, that's how you know it's real bad. So that's the Waffle House Index. It's not official, but it pretty much is. So hunker down. Take care. Remember that tornadoes happen with these, so make sure that you have alerts on loud enough to wake you up, and charge your phones. That's the best advice I have for you. And so I'll see you guys tomorrow morning with another update.